why we fast is to purify our prayer. We have so many examples of fasting in the Holy Bible. For example, the 3 youths in Babylon who were fasting had a much better health than those who were eating various meats. We also have Queen Esther, who saved Israel for after a 3-day fast. And also, of course, in the New Testament, we have our Lord Jesus Christ telling us the benefits of fasting with prayer. Now, like many other second-order virtues, fasting is spiritually beneficial principally because of what it enables us to do or learn or achieve rather than intrinsically. In its own, fasting assists us in prayer by A, clearing the mind, B, by removing certain common physiological and psychological shackles to concentrate and sustain prayer, and C, by putting us back in touch with the reality of our genuine dependence upon God's providence, instilling in us a sense of humility and realism about our factual situation as created beings. In addition to these more practical benefits, fasting is also important as an obedience, one which builds character by instilling in us the more general virtue of self-restraint, giving us practice in setting our own desires to one side for the purpose of fulfilling God's will. Finally, fasting is a momentary and deliberate mode of participation in a higher life, a paradisical life, paradise of life, in which the death, pain, and suffering of other creatures is not a condition for human survival, a moment which both foreshadows the final eschaton, the end, and looks backward to the life of Adam and Eve before the fall, enabling those of us who have not taken upon ourselves the more demanding obligations of the monastic life, a temporary mode of participation in that ascetical ideal. And for all of these reasons, fasting is important and indeed obligatory for Christian Orthodox. Now we have fasting starting today, 2 weeks for the Dormition of our Holy Mother. We have fasting periods of Christmas, Lent, Easter Lent, 2 weeks for the June 15th to 29th for the Holy Apostles, and we have the fasting for the Dormition of our Holy Mother, which starts August 1st and finishes August 15th. And of course, the fasting every Wednesday and Friday. Now, fasting together with prayer, of course, is a very huge spiritual weapon. And he says, the Father says here, this week I'd like to specifically address the question of precisely how fasting helps us in the art of prayer. To a great extent, this assistance is physiological in character. Remember what our Lord Jesus Christ told his disciples when some people went to our Lord and say, why is it that your disciples cannot get rid of these demonic spirits? And he says, this type of spirit needs fasting and prayer, was what our Lord Jesus Christ told them. Fasting and prayer for someone, to help someone, is a very strong spiritual weapon. Now, one of the general results of reducing food intake is that the body begins, instead of burning ingested calories, to use resources already stored in the body as fat for food. And this biological process is called ketosis, which absolutely is essential for human survival during periods of want, and was found by most ancient cultures, including the ancient Jews, to be highly effective for clearing the mind from some of its customary frenetic activity, and for encouraging a certain degree of dispassion, and that one finds it easier not to obsess about what one wants, being passionate about things. And both of these effects are, for obvious reasons, helpful in one's religious life. It helps us also be able to say no when we are supposed to say no to certain temptations. Now, fasting also helps one stay alert, since while one is fasting, one is not subject to the usual the glut of high calories after one's meals, and so not as strongly affected by the desire to sleep off after eating. And this too is useful both for staying awake during private prayer and during the public service of the church, which tend to be more frequent during the fasting periods. Amazingly enough, fasting even helps one be less concerned about eating, and once one is accustomed to it, less distracted by food. Biologically speaking, in addition to helping one burn body fat, ketosis also has the advantage of helping one feel less hungry and helping one to maintain muscle tone. So fasting, when taken seriously, actually helps one overcome one's obsession with food itself. This is, I think, helpful for people to know, since I find that converts, for instance, are often afraid to keep the fast for fear of dealing with the discomfort of actual hunger. This is not generally a problem for simple biological reasons related to ketosis. The part of us that fasting usually causes to suffer is the part of us that wants to be constantly entertained and catered to. And of course, this is one of the very aspects of our character that we are seeking to overcome through fasting and prayer in the first place. To be fair, ketosis, as a sustained biological process, is usually not fully entered into save after a somewhat longer period of extended or complete fasting, which is why the so-called Ninevite fast, that is, a complete 3-day fast at the beginning of Lent, was customary for Orthodox Christians of the past, and also why a regimen of no more than 2 small meals a day was prescribed for weekdays during Lent. When fasting is practiced in such a way, in its fullness, as it were, so that one begins to realize a degree of one's fundamental dependence upon God and the kindly benefits of His sheltering and nurturing creation, then we are also given a visceral sense of our own habitual ingratitude and the goodness of God's creation. Without such additional efforts, however, the practical impact of fasting on our prayer life may be relatively small and difficult to perceive, and this appears to have led many in the modern church to question its usefulness on empirical grounds. Those of the faithful who have made us of the traditional fasting practices of the Church in their fullness, however, are well aware of the prayerful and dispassionate benefits of the practice. If you don't believe me, go ask any monastic. In any case, fortunately, the monastics we know in Orthodoxy do not eat meat, ever. When they're not fasting, they can have dairy and eggs and stuff, but they cannot eat meat. Okay? They can have fish, but no meat. Now, in any case, fortunately, there are other benefits of fasting available when even to those of us who do nothing more than keep basic fasting rules regarding what types of food may or may not be eaten on given days. And I'll discuss that more next week. He says, there are, of course, some relatively rare health reasons for which fasting may be physically harmful and contraindicative of particular individuals, but this is far less common than generally believed, and such complicated situations are properly handled by economia with the competent assistance of both medical and spiritual guides. The fasting obligation of the Orthodox faith is not something that one can or should set aside as one's own, as the Christian Orthodox obligatory in this case means obligatory. And this is by Father Cassian Sibley of the Life-Giving Spring of the Mother of God Orthodox Church in Bryan, Texas. His wife is a college professor and his daughter is a freshman in college. He was raised in Africa and is an adult convert to Orthodoxy. Father Castian has an active prison ministry, and in his spare time is a permaculturist and organic gardener. And this is by ocf.net. I'll leave a link below. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. My Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.